Good morning. That's a lot better than what you guys gave him. So my name is Valerie Brown. I'm originally from Albany, Georgia. I was a 400-meter runner in college. I had the opportunity to compete overseas for a little bit during my time. My undergraduate degree is in graphic designs, and my master's is in recreation and sport administration. To be completely honest with this group, track and field opened a lot of doors for me throughout my life. Getting an education was the first priority for me. I attended Western Kentucky University, located in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That was the best time of my life. I learned valuable lessons that I'm applying to today. And so I am grateful with the opportunity to be able to do what I love to do, which is coaching and developing young people. And that is what brings me here. So we can go ahead and open it up for questions for those who have questions about college, myself, track and field, or anything. No questions? Yes.
What methods did you find effective in balancing studies with track and field at the collegiate level?
That's a great question. So the young man asked, what methods did I find to be beneficial to balance my time between track and field and academics? Honestly, it was utilizing the resources that are provided for student athletes. Having an opportunity to meet with academic advisors throughout my time, especially my first year into college. Time management, just making a daily schedule in terms of what I had to do in reference to practice, training, classes, meeting with my coaches, meeting with my professors, and being useful of those times and making sure that I made my academics a priority. Great question. Yes?
What would you say are the major requirements to achieving a perfect scholarship for a student athlete?
What would be the major requirements to achieve an athletic scholarship? The biggest thing that we look for in student athletes is character. So we want to make sure that we are recruiting great people of integrity, honesty, responsibility, being independent, as well as being a high-level athlete, and understanding what it takes to be successful. Social media, that's a big one. We, as coaches, we look at your social media just to make sure that you're representing your families, yourselves, your institutions, in a first-class manner. Great question. Yes, sir.
When you talk about social media, how do you manage blocking out the noise of negative comments that you may see online in the D1 world?
Sure. So I think as a Division I athlete, you all have to be independent. You have to think for yourselves. You have to be your own leader. And so what that means is being mindful of what you like, being mindful of what you share on social media. Just making sure that it's positive reinforcement, whether it be with yourself, your peers, or your program. What other questions? He's asking great questions. We need someone else to ask some questions too. Yes.
What year for undergrad would you say was your hardest year?
The hardest year for me during my undergrad time in college would have been my first year into college. And that's because it's transitioning from high school to college and learning what comes with that. Being able to balance academics, practice, athletics, my social life, and knowing when and what to do that was appropriate. How many of you want to go to college for athletics? Just raise your hand. Now for the hands that are raised, none of you have asked a question. Yeah. So my question to this group is, as you navigate through this process and you say you want to go to college for college athletics, what's important to you? What questions can I answer that will help give you the information that you need?
Don't be shy.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that your first year was your hardest.
Yes.
how do you find adapting to a new coach?
She said, my first year was my hardest year. How did I adapt to a new coach? Honestly, it was trusting the process through the recruiting process. So when that coach was reaching out to me, speaking with me about the opportunity at the institution to receive a scholarship, I asked questions that was important to me. So I asked questions related to coach-athlete relationship, training, mental health, the process in which he was going to develop me as an athlete. So I think that the more you have the ability to trust those coaches, the better the relationship will be through the transition process.
What school? Immaculate just got a $500 full credit for asking the right question. Thank you.
Awesome. Congratulations. So now we have some more questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
What is the transition from high school to college? Like,
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
what is the transition from high school to college like?
The biggest transition is learning how to manage your time. Because you are away from your parents, you're away from your high school coaches, you have a lot of time as a collegiate athlete. We set your classes, we help you schedule those classes, but it's up to you to go to class at the right time, to be on time. It's up to you to go to all of your meetings, show up to practice on time. It's up to you on your own time to actually study as well. With the academic piece, it's deeper than just being in class doing the schoolwork. You have to make sure when you go home that you're actually studying and that you're putting forth an effort to make sure that you succeed on an academic standpoint. And a lot of that goes back to you as an independent person. So that's the biggest transition is time management and learning how to be independent. Yes, sir. Can you speak in the mic for me? Or speak a little bit louder?
Okay, press the button and then speak in it.
Hi, the question I was asking before was, as an athlete, what factors should we consider when deciding which program to join? And the second question was, you mentioned before that we should have a good social media presence.
What are the things that coaches are looking for on our social media pages?
Great question, young man. The first question, though, can someone a little closer repeat that first question for me so I make sure I have it right?
The first question was, what factors should we consider when deciding what program to join, what college program to join? What factors?
So what I always tell student athletes and their parents is you have to make a list of core values that are important to your family. Some of those may include the relationship with coaches, the coach's environment that you'll be in terms of the city and the state, academics if the institution has your major, also how that particular coach trains student athletes, the success of the program, the graduation rate of the program. All of those things are super important. So I think when you're trying to decide what institution and what coach to join, you have to ask questions that are important to you. I would refer back to what you want out of the experience. Do you want to go to a program where they have 20 sprinters and you are one of 20? Or do you want to go to a program where there's 12 sprinters and you are one of 12? Only you can answer that question for what's important to you. What does your training group look like? Are you the fastest? Are you the second fastest? Are you somewhere in the middle? All of those things matter, but it goes back to what's important to you. So I think as you start to navigate through this process today, lead today thinking about what's my list from 1 to 5. Those are what are the most important things that you value as an individual as well as your family value and what's important to you. And as you start to talk to coaches and you start to be recruited, you can check off your list what coaches, what institutions match your list. Never change your list to match a coach. Stay true to your list and what's important to you and your family. And with that, I think you'll choose the right institution. Can you ask me your second question again?
The second question was, you mentioned social media. I was asking, what are some of the things that coaches look for on our various social media pages?
So with social media, coaches are more so trying to make sure that what you're posting is not negative. It's not anything that's not going to be a good representation. Drinking, partying, coaches don't want to see that because obviously we want to recruit student athletes who are not involved in those things. So just making sure that whatever's on your social media, if you don't feel comfortable showing your parents and your pastor, then we don't want to see it either. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any examples of like success stories that came from your program?
Success stories that came from my program. Right now, this is my first year at Indiana University. I recruited a young lady from Guyana. When she first got to Austin Peay, which was the previous institution I was working at, she had decent times. So my goal was to basically get her better, also give her an opportunity to get an education. This young lady came into Austin Peay running 56.9 in the 400, and she was running 24 seconds in the 200. She is now a grad student with me at Indiana University, so she transferred from one institution to another to follow me because of the opportunities I provided for her. This young lady right now is a regional qualifier several times. She is second in her country for the 400. Her best time right now is 52.44, and she's running 23.32. So you talk about success stories. This was a young lady from an academic standpoint was told from peers in her country that she could not come to the States and make something out of herself and get an education. They told her basically that college was going to be too hard or too challenging for her. She's excluded all of that. This young lady is now a graduate student at Indiana University pursuing a master's degree. So you talk about coming from point A to point B, and she's grown a lot in terms of who she is as a young lady, and now she's getting ready to graduate with a degree and competing at a very high level.
This one in the back right here. So press on the button and speak in the mic, please.
How did I feel when I had to adapt to a new environment?
So that's a question I can answer.
Yes,
That's a question I think I can answer because I got a scholarship from Colorado High and I went to Flagstaff, Arizona. It's the first time I saw snow. First time I saw lots of people that did not look like me. So culturally, I had to adapt a lot of ways for food. Again, the food was not the same, a lot of pastas and stuff. And more importantly though, academics is a reminder that's what I'm here for. I'm a student athlete. Reminder that's always the student comes first. From an adaptation standpoint, learn quickly. Coach gave you all the points already. They're looking for good students who are responsible, go to school on time, classes on time, practice on time, and be a great representation of the program. Hope that answers your question. Sorry, jumping, Coach.
No, you're good. You're good.
Coach is not from Jamaica.
No, I'm not from Jamaica. I do get asked that question sometimes, but I am not from Jamaica. This is actually my first time to Jamaica, so it's been a pleasure being here.
One more question over there.
So how do you keep your mental health in check while attending college?
So how did I keep my mental health in check while being in college? That's a very good question, and I want you all to really listen to this response. If you look at today's climate, mental health is definitely on the rise in terms of student athletes, people in general, all ages, from different places who are currently struggling. For me personally, I have a strong relationship with God. I'm really big on my faith. I would make time for myself, aside from my peers, my team, my family, in prayer. I would do things that give me pure joy and peace. So I love to paint, I love to draw. So those were the things that I did on the side when I wasn't in class, I wasn't at a meet, I wasn't practicing. I think it's very important to find what it is that you enjoy outside of being a student athlete. Your life is more than just being an athlete. You are a human being. And at the end of the day, what you do on a daily basis as a student athlete does not completely define you as a person. I think sometimes student athletes really get wrapped up into being a great athlete that they forget that they are human beings and you matter as a person. So I would just strongly suggest find ways to give you joy and peace that doesn't involve being an athlete or being a student or necessarily with your family, just with yourself. Make time for yourself. Yes, sir.
How do you start the process as regards to getting scholarship?
So he asked how you start the process in terms of getting a scholarship. I think the biggest thing you have to do is think about what you want to major in. I think we forget sometimes that we go to college for an education. And so don't look at institutions that don't have your major. A lot of international athletes get to the States and they major in things that they would never use. So they go to college for 4 or 5 years and then they're back home and they're not using that degree. So I think you have to narrow it down what's important to you, what you want to study. Once you find those institutions that have those majors, then you start to look at track programs or soccer programs or whatever sport you're involved in. From there, you look at the coach's bio. Do I think this coach is a coach who can get me better? Have they coached athletes from my country? If they haven't, what does that look like? Have conversations with those coaches through email, communication, reaching out to them, asking them questions about their program, the recruiting process. A lot of programs have their standards listed online. If you go online and just say you go to Indiana University, you go to recruits or recruitable information, and it'll have the standards of the program. So you will know right away if you fit the dynamics in terms of what they look for in a student athlete. And if you think you meet the standard, from there, start the recruiting process by reaching out to the coach. When you reach out to the coach, make sure you provide as much information as possible. Your name, your personal best, your fastest time, your best mark, how they can contact you. Maybe even put your social media tags on there as well, especially if you have videos. Your high school coach. We love to talk to high school coaches to get some insight on you. So the more information you provide, the easier the recruiting process will be to let us know exactly who we're talking to and who we may be recruiting. Yes, ma'am. I'll be honest, I am not much of a social butterfly. So I spend a lot of my time, like I said, in prayer, during my free time, painting and drawing. I think you have to pick your battles in terms of what you want out of your college experience. Having some free time, going to the mall, going to football games, basketball games, it's all about time management. So look at your priorities first. And if you say on this particular day, I have these 4 things, if you knock those 4 things out and you have some available time, then sure, put some social aspects, some social activities in there. But make sure first and foremost that your priorities are in line first and that you take care of those things. And then we have 3 questions. So I'll start back here.
Was there a time you wanted to give up, and why did you and how did you overcome that?
So he asked, was there a time I wanted to give up, and how did I work on that? As a collegiate athlete, yes, there was a time in my time where I wanted to give up. I had a hamstring injury, and that was difficult. I think sometimes when you have setbacks, you don't realize how to overcome them as a young person. So during that time, I developed a closer relationship with my coaches. I would talk to them and let them know how I was feeling. But I also had to be reminded of my goal and what I wanted out of the experience. I wanted to make a run at the Olympic trials. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to be able to give back to my family and my hometown. And so I kept those things in perspective during that time when I had those setbacks. So I think if you keep your goals in perspective, you can overcome the adversity. Adversity will happen in college, whether it's dealing with you lose a family member with death, your parents go through a divorce, you experience injuries, you fail a class. All of those things are minor setbacks that play a huge part on you as a student athlete and how you respond to it. There were a lot of times from an academic standpoint, I struggled. I failed classes to a point where I thought I was going to lose a scholarship. But I had coaches who really believed in me and really pushed me. So when you talk about that recruiting process, you got to make sure that that particular coach is someone who's going to hold you accountable for your actions, but also push you beyond what you have for yourself. Yes.
Yes, I have two questions. What was the maximum amount of sleep that you got throughout the entire process? Because I know it's very important that you get enough rest, but with balancing school and track and field, it can be hard. So um what is the maximum you should get that you need to perform well in training and school? And my second question is, I I'm aware that a lot of coaches overseas they tend to burn out the athletes. So in a case where you had the conversation with the coach and they explained to you that they wouldn't do so, but throughout the program or during the program you realize that you're burning out. What do you do in a case like that?
Sure, great questions. So let me answer the last question first, and we'll come back to the first question. Collegiately, I think it's very important to have conversations with your coaches. Coaches will not know when you're hurting, when you're experiencing an injury that's not visible. So you have to have a conversation with your coach. Ask those tough questions. Hey, coach, I'm not used to doing a lot of speed work, or I'm not used to doing a lot of endurance work. My body is not responding in the way that I think it should. I'm extremely tired, or I have these things going on with my body that are different. Can we back off of training? Can you explain to me why the training looks the way that it does, and give that coach an opportunity to guide and help you through that? There are some coaches who will overtrain. I think you will find that regardless of what program you're a part of. But I think the communication piece is extremely important during that time. The young lady, the other part of that question, she asked about basically rest, how much rest is needed. I think you all have to make sure that you're getting 8 hours of sleep. You have to get 8 hours of sleep. So that means it's going to force you to put your cell phone down. It's going to force you to get offline. It's going to force you to make sure that you are taking some time to rest and recovery. A lot of that is independent. It's something that you have to do on your own. Coaches are not going to hold your hand to make sure you're getting enough rest. If you know you have practice the next day, you have an 8 o'clock class the next day, there is no reason why we should be up past midnight. So I think a lot of that falls back to you guys as being independent and growing through that process and having some accountability for yourselves and your actions, making sure that you make time for you and making sure that you are getting the rest and recovery that you need. Yes.
What advice do you have for athletes in terms of nutrition, recovery, and injury prevention?
Great questions. Honestly, the biggest thing with nutrition is making sure that you eat 3 meals a day, making sure that you have carbs, protein, and all the things that you need, making sure you hydrate. Again, it's about time management, making it a priority. If I took away your phone right now, a lot of you all would probably be lost for the next 2 hours, right? So with nutrition, recovery, and hydration, you have to be attached to it just like you are to your phone. You have to make it a priority. Coaches can give you the right guidance. We can give you the resources. We can provide healthy snacks for you. But it's up to you to actually eat those snacks or prioritize your time to make sure it's included in your schedule. So a lot of it goes back to you making sure that you have the right supplements, whether it's vitamin D, iron, ferritin, making sure all of those levels are at a great point so you can compete and perform at a high level. But the biggest thing is you being independent and making the time to make that a priority for yourself. Yes, ma'am.
As student athletes, depression is one of the feelings we experience. All of us experience depression. What did you put your focus to like not feel depressed all the time?
So a lot of resources right now in college provide sports psychologists to assist the programs and student athletes who may be struggling. I think the biggest thing as a student athlete is understanding what mental health is, knowing when you're struggling and knowing when you need help, being able to ask questions through those challenging times. But the biggest thing is knowing when to ask help and making sure that you have those resources available. Most colleges will have those resources available. But again, it goes back to you making sure that you reach out to the right person, that you make yourself available and have those conversations for what you may be struggling with before we get to a point where we have a very serious situation. Yes, sir. That's a great question, young man. So excellence at the highest standard for me is at the top of my list for core values. And so what that means is applying excellence to everything I do in life, whether it's academics, whether it's my character, whether it's athletics, or just making sure I put myself in a position to have success at the highest level. Integrity, doing the right thing at the right time all the time. That's where a lot of young people fall through the cracks. Because you say one thing, and then I see something different on social media, or you present yourself in a different way. Honesty. Honesty is very important. You cannot survive in life by not being honest with your true self and honest to the people who are put in place to assist you and help you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question as it relates to stipend, is it that all athletes receive it or only athletes that perform at a certain level?
Only athletes that perform at a certain level for most institutions. A lot of stipends are included with your scholarship if you are a full scholarship athlete. A lot of that comes with high expectations to make sure that you are performing at a high level, you're training at a high level, and you are a great student.